Hey everybody, good evening to you. Thanks for being with me tonight. This is Courtroom Insider. I'm Nate Eaton. Today is the 7th of May, and boy, oh boy, what a day it was in the Chad Daybell trial. We heard a lot. New stuff we'd heard before, but is still shocking to hear again. Zulema Pastenes walked into the courtroom, and she told all. She didn't hold back. She answered the questions. She was on the stand the majority of the day. We also had the Idaho medical examiner take the stand toward the tail end of the afternoon. But today, I would say, was about Zulema. Zulema tells all. In fact, when she walked in the courtroom, I didn't recognize her. Her hair was lighter. I don't know if you could tell on the live stream what she looked like. But she was confident on the stand. She answered the questions. She shared what she knew, what she saw, what she heard. Pryor really tried to pin her down on a couple of things that he thought were not accurate as far as her changing the story. He tried to go down the road of impeaching her as a witness, basically saying that she's been lying, and because of what she said before, we can't trust her testimony now. We haven't really seen that with any other witness. It was an interesting day. There's so much to talk about. Let me know where you're watching from. If you have any questions, we have questions galore coming in, and I'm going to try to get to them all. Every night I say I'll keep it to an hour, and then I go longer just because there's so much to talk about. And I tell you, I didn't even get a sliver in tonight's show about everything that happened today. So you need to go back and watch if you're really into it. Here's what we're going to talk about. As I mentioned, Zulema took the stand. Before we get to that, I want to go back to Alex's weird massage. This was an interesting little nugget that came out of Zulema's interview with the cops back in 2020. I'm going to play you something. Some of the people in line today at lunch when we were talking, they had not heard this. To me, it was fascinating. Could Zulema have been another victim? After I play this for you tonight, you might think so. Zulema revealed that she was given immunity by the police to testify, by the prosecutor. That means she won't be charged in connection to these crimes. The deal was basically, from what we understand, and John Pryor got her to say this, that you testify against Lori and Chad, we won't charge you in connection to it. So many of you have asked me that. Many of you daily are asking, was she given immunity? Was Melanie Pulaski given immunity to talk? Was Melanie Gibb given immunity? We don't know for sure about the other two, but we know on Zulema she was given immunity, so she will not be charged because she testified. We'll also talk about what she saw, what she heard, mainly in relation to what Chad was doing and instructing. Zombies, castings, chords, dark, light. I said it to some people in line that if you happen to be on YouTube today and you were scrolling through and East Idaho News came up and you're like, oh, it's a trial, I'm going to click in, your mind would have been blown. You wouldn't have known what in the world was happening, but it may have sucked you in a little because it did many of us. We'll talk about what Alex said to her, to his wife, Zulema, and then, of course, we will remember Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. Before we jump into that, many of you have messaged to ask for a diagram of what the courtroom looks like. So I'm going to lay it out. If you're watching online and you haven't been in there, it's hard to see because they have the 4 different windows. So let me just show you that this is how it's laid out. There's a door right back here that we enter. So you walk in. There's gallery. Now, it looks like I have 2 benches here. There's actually more than 2 benches on each side. There's probably 5 or 6. The jurors have a door right here that they walk in. The judge's door is here. So we walk in, we fill up these benches. The first row over here is reserved for the defense. Over here, the whole middle section is reserved, other than the back row, which is where I sit. I sit right here. So sometimes you might be able to see me on the camera. With Lori Vallow's trial, I sat over here, but here you get kind of a little better view of the jurors and everybody. So this section is reserved for the prosecution for Larry and Kay Woodcock. They sit right here. Vicky Hoban for family members of the victims, law enforcement. And then over here is open to the public. Now this is different this year because there are monitors here. There's a monitor every, 2 or 3 seats on the front and the back row. If you are sitting over here, there's a chance that you could see what's on those monitors. So on days like tomorrow, when we expect to see autopsy photos of JJ and Tylee, the judge will have everybody here move over here, and that's when people can fill in the middle section. It's just temporarily. Last year, this side was open the entire time, and so was this side, other than, I think, the first row. They block off the first row. The problem is that this is so close to the jury that they might be able to hear people whispering. The first day of opening statements last year during Lori's trial, all the reporters were lined up in a row here, and the typing was so loud you could hear it in the recording. I'm sure many of you remember that. So now we kind of spread out the computers. So that's kind of the layout there. Here's the podium. The podium's directly across from the witness. The witness will often look at the jurors. If you're John Pryor, you'll look at the jurors too, or you'll look in the back. Here's where the prosecutors sit. Here's where Daybell and Pryor sit, so they're directly across from the jurors. There's where the judges sit. Now, some people asked, who are all the people, outstanding in the area? Well, Judge Boyce, there's a clerk here. Now, the clerk is responsible for, keeping minutes and pulling things that the judge might need. I think that the clerk dims the lights, helps the projector run, things like that. Over here, the judge's staff attorney, she sits behind the defense. And then the lady who sits here is running the live stream and the technical stuff. A bailiff or a marshal will sit there. The jury bailiff or marshal is there. There's a bailiff or marshal over here, and then there's a bailiff or marshal right here. And sometimes there's one over here that if there's stuff being shown on the screen, they'll go move and mark it or stand there so that nobody can look at the monitors. So I hope that lays out the courtroom for you. I wish that we had a photo that we could show you, but no cameras are allowed in there, and I'm not going to risk getting kicked out by showing you. So many of you have asked. I hope that covers it. We did ask during the previous trial if we could go in and take a picture to show you, and they said no, we couldn't. So sorry about that. All right, that's out of the way. Let's jump into today. Day number 18, I believe. It feels like it could be 38. We've been at this for over a month now, but it's just day number 18. And again, think about it. A year ago, during Lori Vallow's trial started on April 10th after jury selection. Chad Daybell's trial started on April 10th after jury selection. We had a verdict by May 12th, I believe, in Lori's case, the Friday before Mother's Day, which would put it at this week. We're not going to have a verdict yet. The thing I want to start with is back in 2021, I believe, the police in Arizona dumped a bunch of data and recordings and video. They released it for the media. It was on a Friday. I remember I was out of town and we got this link, and there was so much in this. There was texts, that stuff I read you about Ian Pawlowski last night, that was in there. And there was video, police interviews with Zulema. These interviews came up today. They were a significant portion of the testimony today. This part I'm going to play was not. So Zulema was called in to meet with the police. Hermosillo, Kaya Kamanu, she brought in her attorney, Garrett Smith, who was there today. He was back in the courtroom. Remember, we talked about him last night. He represents Melanie and Ian Pawlowski as well. He was back in the courtroom today, no issues. And this revelation came out from Zulema at the end, toward the end of an interview she did with police. This is about 2 to 3 minutes long. She talks about what happens the day after she married Alex Cox. I want to make it clear, this was not played in court today. She wasn't asked about it, but I think it gives some color, some context, some perspective as far as what may have been happening with Alex and Lori and Chad. And it's just a crazy story anyway. So here it is.
And we were in Vegas. if you guys knew, but Alex was a massage therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And my back was bugging me, and after the trip there in the car, and he said, he's like, I'll just give you a massage and just fix your back. I'm like, okay. So, but for some strange reason, this is really weird. Like, for some strange reason, at the time, of course, I didn't think anything about it, but now I'm like all creeped out about it. He said that we needed to find a Walmart because he wanted to buy this big, huge piece of plastic to put on the bed so the oil didn't get on the bed. But it was one of those ones that you put on the floor when you paint. Okay. And we went to Walmart and we got it and he put it on the bed.
And this is when you were in Vegas?
When we were in Vegas, yeah. It was the day after we got married.
So you put it on the bed.
Yeah.
And he gave you the massage. What did you do with
the weirdest thing about it was that, and this is when it gets even weirder, because after that, I fell asleep. Okay, because I was so relaxed after the massage. I was so relaxed, I fell asleep. And then I remember waking up. I was in and out, and I could hear him talking. And I was like, who's he talking to? And I kept trying to wake up, and finally I made myself wake up, and I'm like, Alex, I'm like, who are you talking to? He's like, nobody. I was talking to myself. I'm like, okay. So then I remember I took a bath, and I said, let's watch a movie. And he was on his phone, I think playing his game or something. And he was super quiet. It was totally eerie for Alex, because Alex usually he was joking, and he would say something and he would find one way or another to make it into a joke and make it funny, and he was always making you laugh and laughing at himself or making a joke about something, but he said nothing for the rest of the evening. Nothing.
Well, that's really weird that he had you lay on plastic.
So maybe I'm just a little too crazy now because of all the stuff that's happened, but in my back of my mind, I keep thinking that who was on the phone was Chad and Lori, and that was supposed to be my last day, and he was supposed to.
And it very well could have been. When you woke up, did you feel normal? I mean, did you feel when you said you were in and out of consciousness, like you were trying to wake up or you didn't feel right?
I was really down, I was really one of those ones when you're trying to wake up and you can't wake up kind of thing. I was thinking, why am I so relaxed and I can't wake up kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Did you feel drugged?
Drowsy, I was kind of really drowsy. I was like, what?
What time of day was it?
In the middle of the afternoon.
Did he give you anything to drink before that? Or make you a drink or fix you anything to eat?
I mean, I remember us going to get something to eat, and then we came back to the hotel, and I remember we did have some drinks with us. I don't know, maybe I might have had no, I didn't have a Red Bull that day. I had something with me. Might have been a water or something, I don't know, with me. And I always used the little cup, I like to use the little glasses, so I always had my glass with ice and whatever it was that I was drinking at the time.
So did he give you a massage? I mean, did you have oil on?
Not enough to
use.
Or the drop cloth.
But a drop cloth, you know what I mean? It just didn't. At the time, I had no question about it. Now I'm like, why would you necessitate a whole drop cloth all over the bed to give me a massage? That just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
So did,
And then the fact that he was quiet for the rest, that he said nothing, like nothing after that. He was quiet. And that's so not Alex. Alex is not quiet.
so did you ever ask him, like, man, why did we need all that, or what?
No.
And so you heard him
No.
talking to somebody.
And I believed him that he was talking to himself, at the time. You know what I mean? Trusting him completely.
And that was right after you guys were married.
The day after.
Interesting. Does make you wonder what would have happened. Well, one, was he trying to kill her? Who was he talking to on the phone? Were they trying to... They were married. We didn't hear anything about whether she had his life insurance policy, or if Alex, had her life insurance policy. But could you imagine if there was another death in all of this? Zulema followed by Alex a few weeks later. Anyway, just a little bit of background there to fill you in on the police interview that we'll talk a little bit about in a couple of minutes. Now, Zulema took the stand. Excuse me. She said that she met Chad in the summer of 2018. Went to a conference or something, met him. They weren't friends. They didn't really keep in touch. But then the St. George conference happened. Remember that St. George conference where Lori met Chad, and instantly they were flirting with each other. They were acting like they were in love. They were giggly. They were, excuse me, Lori was putting on the moves. According to Zulema, she was putting on the moves. She was very flirtatious, and Lori was the one instigating it. Then on the way home, Lori was driving. Melanie Gibb was in the car, and Lori had a little assignment for Zulema and Melanie Gibb, and I believe one other person was in the car. Here's what Lori said.
Did you also travel home from the conference with Lori?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall her saying anything on the drive home?
Yes. She was driving on the way back, and Melanie Gibb and I were in the back seat, and she asked us to search the scriptures for certain things. The first things that she had us research was anything to do with James the Less, and then she also had us research and the scripture, and that was Doctrine and Covenants 77:11, and she had us read it out loud for her.
At that time, did you learn the significance of the James the Less?
Not at that time. She didn't expand on that time.
At some point later, did you learn the significance of that?
Yes. Lori said that Chad had told her that in a
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. Calls for hearsay.
Your Honor, it's a conspirator.
World.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
And I had asked you if at some point later you learned the significance of the James the Less.
Thank you. Yes, Lori said Chad had told her previous lives, and in a previous life, she had been, they had been married, and he was James the Less, who was one of Jesus's disciples, and that she was his wife, and her name in that life was Helena.
And in regards to the other scripture reference, the D&C, did you ever learn the significance of that?
Yeah, it was in regards of the gathering of the 144,000, and Chad had told her that they were the angels that were supposed to gather the 144,000.
Okay, so Melanie Gibb testified that after that Chad and Lori met, they were instantly communicating, instantly in love, instantly talking with each other. And then there was a conference a little while later in Arizona. This is where Chad went and spoke, and Then there was a gathering after at Lori's house. It was all women and Chad. I think she said about 6 to 8 women. And Lori, they went outside. Zulema and Chad and Lori went outside, and Lori was playing basketball. Chad played a little bit with her, but then he went back inside with Zulema, and as they were walking back in, Lori said to Chad something like, "Oh, are you scared? You're not going to stay out here? Are you scared of me?" Chad went inside. He and Lori then gave Zulema at one point a blessing. Actually, I don't know if Lori was involved in that blessing. I don't recall. I do know that Chad for sure was. And that in the blessing, Chad repeatedly praised Zulema, really built up her confidence. She was an elect person. And then he gave a blessing to Alex and did the same thing. Really told him that he is a chosen person. He is, just really made him feel good in these blessings. Zulema testified that Chad then just proceeded to teach the group of women. And here is a really important point, I think, that the prosecution was trying to make, is that Chad sat in the middle of the room while all of the women that were there sat around him, like on the sofa. I picture it like he's on an ottoman in the middle of the room and the women are around him, but I don't know if it was an ottoman. Regardless, he was the teacher. Not him and Lori. Him. The prosecutor asked that a few times, even on redirect, that Chad was the one teaching. And what was he teaching? He was teaching about 3 phases to translation. 3 different phases to be translated. Zulema had never heard this stuff before. But Chad said, excuse me, that the phases were emotional, spiritual, and physical. And that you work through those phases to become translated. And we'll talk in a minute about the fact that if you've been translated in a previous life, on a previous planet, you don't have to repent here anymore. That's the great news. If you've conquered translation during another time, you're safe here. Zulema said that she went to the temple and she walked into the celestial room, which in LDS temples, they're rooms that you can go and sit and ponder. They're beautiful rooms with gorgeous decoration, like lamps. And there's photos actually before the temples are dedicated by the church. Anyone is invited to go through them. My wife and I went through the Richmond, Virginia temple about a year ago and walked through it, and you can see everything. And Zulema walked into this room, the celestial room, and Chad and Lori were there. Both of their spouses were still alive. And Lori came right over and told Zulema, "Don't tell anyone you saw us here." But they were there. And Zulema talked about that. She talked about Chad then asking to meet with her. He had important stuff to tell her about her mission, her life. And they were going for lunch at a place called Firebirds. And it was Melanie Gibb, Lori, Chad, and Zulema. But when they got there, Chad didn't want to tell Zulema the stuff in front of Melanie Gibb. So he told her that he would call her. But they still talked about this stuff, all this religious stuff. And Zulema, it sounds like, is very good at keeping notes because they brought in pages of her journal. She took notes on the back of a receipt that she kept. We'll talk about that in a minute. She had notes. She had the receipts, you could say. Excuse me. So they met for lunch. Chad didn't quite tell Zulema the things he needed to tell her, but he did call her later, and here's what Zulema said happened.
He told me that he was able to read people's past lives, and he wanted to give me, I guess it was like a reading of what my past lives were. And so he gave me all the times that I had been upon the earth before. He told me who I was, about when it had been. And then he also gave me a rating of, I think it was something like a 4.2 light or something similar to that. So Chad and Lori were teaching that in one realm of creations, there could be 5 different worlds to which one person could come to. So on this one, for example, it shows that there is one realm and one realm of creations on the left-hand side. And as you can see, it has 5 circles. So each one of those ones would be a world. And to the left, I have a arrow showing the spirit world. And one person could come to any of these worlds. And he had said that I had come to the 3rd world within this creation 5 times. To the 4th world had come 4 times. And to the 5th world, which will be the earth, which was also the lowest and the darkest of the worlds within this creation, that I had come to this earth 4 times.
Okay, I know you can't really see the image on that screen. It's like 3 oval type circles with writing on it and little like hash marks, I guess you could say. I'm just looking at it. I honestly don't really understand it. It's as if somebody's, yeah, there's circles and stuff. I got a side note. I don't know how they kept all this stuff straight. How many lives you've been in on what planet and what time and numbers and all that. It just, it's a lot to keep straight for different people. But clearly, Zulema was taking notes, and clearly she, let me see. I don't know if it's any better on your screen, but that bottom part here, there's a circle, another circle, a circle, and then some writing here. When the trial's over, they'll release all of this evidence and we'll be able to get a better look at it. But this is just one of the pages from Zulema's journal that was admitted today in court. Okay, so there was also apparently, Chad said that 24 people were part of this special council, including Serena. Serena was part of the group, and it was part of this 7 gatherers group that we'll get to in a minute that John Pryor has hinted at all week. Today we finally got answers as to what that 7 gatherers what the 7 gatherers are. And I have heard Serena was in town earlier this week, but she has since left. So I don't know if she'll be testifying, but she was apparently maybe ready to do that. Okay, so Serena was part of the 24 council, righteous, elect, translated, whatever. But she no longer was because she questioned Chad about his teachings of repentance. I mentioned a minute ago that Chad was teaching that if you have been exalted, translated in another planet, in another time, that you no longer need to repent here on earth. That it doesn't matter, doesn't count for you. And Lori, well, I don't know if Chad would. We know for sure Lori would. Zulema said she would often say, she'd often like tap something like, doesn't count for me. I'll tap the mic or something. No, not me, doesn't count for me. And that is how apparently they were using their justification to not have to repent or change their habits. They could really get away with whatever they wanted because in previous lives they had been exalted. Then the teachings about limbo, spirits being in limbo, zombies, dark, all that stuff comes out. Again, Zulema said she had not heard this, but she was intrigued. And she did admit she agreed with it. She went along with it. And Alex was 100% in on it. Zulema was curious. I mean, she'd never heard it, and she clearly was interested in it because she was taking all these notes. Here's when she found out about the zombies and the dark spirits inhabiting bodies and what would happen when that would happen.
When a person passes away, that there was a small time where the body is still a viable body, and it could be occupied by a dark spirit or a demon, and that because the body no longer had the spirit that was originally there, but it was being occupied by a demon, that then that spirit could not move to the spirit world, that it would go into a limbo.
So the original spirit occupying the body would go to limbo?
Correct.
And when you say they were teaching, who is the they?
Chad and Lori.
Okay, you catch that? It later came out, too, that the spirit was tied to the body with cords, and you would have the evil spirit, and you would have to cut the cords to get the evil spirit out, which was part of the casting ceremony, which I had not heard that before. I had heard about the cords. I had not heard about the cutting of the cords during the casting. I mentioned the 7 gatherers. This is a question that John Pryor has asked Melanie Gibb and Melanie Boudreau both, and both have said they don't know what it is. Well, Zulema explained today what it is. A group of 7 women, Christina, Nicole, Serena, Melanie Gibb, Melanie Pulowski, Lori, and Zulema, they all created this email account, a Gmail account, that they all had the password to. It was like 7 gatherers at Gmail or something like that. And they would use it to exchange articles and news stories and thoughts about the end of times, things like that. Zulema said it was used occasionally, not a lot. And Pryor really tried to make a big deal about this. I think because the fact that here was Zulema saying that all these women used it, but Melanie and Melanie had said they'd never heard of it. So maybe he's trying to, discredit their testimony. Then we heard about the vibration levels. And we've heard this before. It's part of energy healing, apparently. That's what other witnesses have said, that everything on Earth has a vibration level. And the way Zulema explained it, the way Chad and Lori told her, is that with the vibration, you would get it would help in your translation level, I guess you could say, the translation process. The higher the vibration level, the more you were translated. And I guess that if you hit a certain point, it would become harder to deal with, but then once you conquered it, you would be translated. I hope I'm explaining that right. You might have to go back and listen because, honestly, as I said, I don't know how they kept all this stuff straight. There was so much happening. One moment. And so much new stuff that was coming out. But note, Zulema also said that their doctrines and their teachings would change as time went on. One day they might be teaching this, and then it would change the next day. Zulema knew that Charles was possessed by a dark spirit. She knew that because Lori had told her that Chad had told her. Originally, it was Ned. They got together. They cast Ned out, and it was a success. But Charles didn't die. Then they did it again, and he didn't die. Then Hiplos, the final evil spirit, was like the worst of the worst. He'd inhabited many bodies across the earth. He was like an expert, and you couldn't get rid of him. And here is when Charles died, and how Zulema found out that he was dead.
Did you talk to Alex about what he thought in relation to Charles?
Yeah, I asked him, how he was doing. I asked him, "Are you okay?" And he asked me, "Why?" I said, "Well, because you just shot somebody yesterday." And he looked at me and he said,
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. It's hearsay.
Co-conspirator, Your Honor.
Based on the response of the state, I find it is an exception, so that's overruled.
Alex Zulema, he was a zombie.
Did Alex seem to truly believe what Chad was telling him?
100%.
Do you recall seeing Chad that next month or in August of 2019?
Yes.
And where was Chad when you saw him?
He came to Arizona and he came to Lori's house and he was staying there.
And did you have an opportunity to observe he and Lori together?
Yes.
And how did they seem?
They were physically romantic. They were holding hands. She was sitting on his lap. They were hugging and touching each other like girlfriend and boyfriend.
Now, the way that Zulema found out Charles was dead, the day after he died, Lori called her over to the house, said, "I want you to come and visit me," and said that Charles had come over with JJ. The same story she told others. Didn't say the heart attack, though. Said that Charles left his phone in the house. Lori started to go through it. Charles became upset when he came in the house, started to argue, came out with a baseball bat, hit Alex. Alex grabbed the gun, shot him. That's the story. Interesting thing that I don't think we've heard this before. We may have. I had heard it off the record, but today we heard her say that Chad predicted JJ would die young and told people this, including Zulema. And here's what he said would happen to JJ when he died young. This was months before JJ died.
Did you ever participate in a casting on Tammy?
Yes, once.
Do you recall when that was?
I believe it was October 9th of 2019.
I'm going to pause there. Sorry. I think I jumped ahead of myself there with the castings. As I told you, there was so much to talk about. Let me go back one clip and see if this is the one I wanted to play.
Do you recall Alex getting a call on December 11th prior to his death?
Sorry, wrong clip. Thank you for bearing with me.
Did you ever participate in a casting on Tammy?
Nope. Oh, tell me I clipped it out. Here we go. Nope. Maybe?
Did you talk to Alex about what he thought in relation to Charles?
Okay, we already played that one.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm going to play this one. This one, I might have butted two together. This is about when Tammy... Well, this is about Tammy's death. If I didn't address the JJ thing, I'll come back to it. But take a listen to this clip.
Did you ever participate in a casting on Tammy?
yes, once.
Do you recall when that was?
I believe it was October 9th of 2019.
Do you recall where the casting took place?
It was at Melanie Pulaski's house. Lori had contacted me earlier that day and said that she needed my help with something, that she was in town and that she was at Melanie's house and that she wanted me to come over there that evening. So I went there.
Did Lori indicate anything to you in relation to knowledge of castings?
She said that they had been given some new information on how to do castings, and that this time that we were going to use the Cosmos to do this casting, and that's how we were going to proceed.
And when you say they, is that Chad and Lori?
Yeah, usually when she would refer to they, like it would mean her and Chad had new information.
Who participated in that casting on Tammy?
It was just me and Lori.
Did you end up learning something had occurred in Idaho around the same time you were conducting the casting?
Much later, I put two and two together that was the same night that someone had attempted to shoot Tammy.
After the casting, did you hear Lori on the phone?
Yes, she was on a phone call afterwards.
How did she appear?
She was extremely angry. She was irate. I had never seen her that upset. She was like it's scary angry. And she was calling whoever she was on the phone with, she was calling this person names like moron, idiot, stupid, and very, very, very angry.
And after she got off that phone call, did she say anything to you?
Yeah, right after she hung up the phone, she said, "Idiot, can't do anything by himself."
You remember what happened that night? That was the night that Tammy Daybell found a gunman in her driveway and thought it was a paintballer. It wasn't. It was Alex Cox, likely with a real gun. And that would have been convenient timing if while they were doing the casting, Tammy happened to die. But she didn't. And she died 10 days later. Now, this clip about JJ, I believe that I have it here.
Dying young.
Here we go.
Or dying soon.
This is, I led up to it a minute ago. Let me just play it for you. Chad predicted or told people that JJ would be dying
Do you
young.
recall anyone talking about JJ dying young or dying soon?
Yeah, during this meeting, Chad said that JJ was going to die young, that he was probably going to die soon, and that he was going to come right back to Earth as Colby's son.
And who is Colby?
Lori's son.
Did Alex believe that there were zombies?
Oh, yeah.
Did Alex ever say anything to you about what he would want done if he became a zombie?
He told me, Zulema, if I ever turn into a zombie, just shoot me in the face.
After Lori and Alex and the kids moved, did you end up visiting Rexburg, Idaho?
Yes, early September.
And when you came to visit in September, was that September of 2019?
Correct.
Where did you stay?
In Alex's apartment.
Did you visit Lori's apartment as well?
Yes.
While you were there, did you see Tylee?
No, she was not there.
Did you ask Lori where she was?
Yes, I did. When you got to be the evening, I asked her, I said, "Hey, where's Tylee?" And she said, well, she had to be free, meaning Tylee had to be free. And when I went to ask her to explain what that meant or what she meant by that, she put her hand against my face and said, "Don't ask."
If you watched today, Do you now see why John Pryor spent so much time trying to discredit Zulema? We haven't heard testimony like that before. The fact that Chad predicted JJ would die young and come back as Colby Ryan's son. The fact that she asked Lori where Tylee was, and Lori put a hand up to the face and said, "Don't ask," and that she had to be freed. Pretty compelling stuff there. That, again, we have not heard that before. Zulema said that Chad was always trying to push her to move to Rexburg, and Lori too. In fact, she at one time confronted Chad and said, why move to Rexburg? There's no job for me there. I have no family. There's nothing there for me. She really did not want to move. And in fact, she, out of the group, did not move. She went to see Alex. When she'd come and visit, she'd stay with Alex, but she didn't move. But Chad was really putting the pressure on her to go there. We talked about the casting ceremonies. We talked about the casting of Tammy. Tammy then dies on October 19th. And the Saturday before Alex died on a Thursday, December 12th. That's the same day Tammy Daybell was exhumed. The Saturday before he died, he went to Mexico. Zulema said when he left, he was fine. When he came back from Mexico, he was sick. Now, Mexico, as you know, sells a lot of drugs, like not just like heroin and fentanyl, but like prescription drugs. In fact, if you walk through, I was in Mexico last year, at the airport, they had like, you could buy antibiotics, you could buy painkiller, you could buy for cheap. A lot of people go to Mexico for drugs, legal and illegal drugs. But she said that Alex came home sick and found out the night before Tammy was exhumed. Lori and Chad called him to say Tammy was being exhumed. I don't know. I know many of you have asked how they knew. And I'm trying to think how they did know. I don't know if I know that. And if I do, I can't remember how Chad and Lori knew. Because the police wouldn't tip them off. They weren't communicating with anyone. And the family of Tammy Daybell didn't know. But somehow Alex got word, according to Zulema. She also, not in this testimony, but in testimony last year, the people in... sorry, somebody just sent me a crazy message. Zulema testified that the night before, a few nights before she died, that Alex said, "If I die, there's a money upstairs and a gun, and this is where you can find it in the closet." I don't know why they didn't ask her about that this year, but that's what she said. So Tammy dies, and Tammy's exhumed, and Alex dies on the same day. I do want to note that during this time, a lot of the jurors were taking notes. I don't think I've ever seen the jury as engaged with a witness as I did today during Tammy Daybell, during Zulema, about Tammy Daybell's death. Zulema, the jurors were engaged. They were taking notes. They were nodding. They were interested. They were into the testimony. Here is what Alex said the day, I believe the day before he died.
Alex getting a call on December 11th prior to his death.
Yes, Chad and Lori called him to tell him that Tammy's body was being exhumed.
Did you ask Alex about the exhumation?
Yeah, it seemed very strange to me that why would they be exhuming Tammy's body? So I asked him, and it seemed really weird too that Lori and Chad were calling him to tell him that the body was being exhumed. Seemed very odd and weird to me. So I asked him, I said, they're exhuming Tammy's body. If they exhume her body, are you going to be tied to anything that happened to Tammy? And he said, no.
And in relation to the call from Lori and Chad, did he make any other statements after he got off the phone?
His demeanor changed quite a bit. Alex was the kind of person that he's always talking and joking and laughing, and he could just fill the whole entire room. And after the call, his demeanor just changed completely. He was very quiet. He was very somber. He was just to himself. And he started saying certain things to me that didn't make any sense at the time. So one of the things that he said is, I think I'm going to be their fall guy. I asked him what that meant, if he could explain to me what he was saying to me, and he wouldn't say anything to me. I was very frustrated with him because he wouldn't say anything. So I would walk away, and then he would say something else, and then I would walk back into the room and try to get him to explain to me again, what do you mean by that? And he wouldn't say anything else. So one of the things he said was, I think I'm being their fall guy. And then as I was walking out of the room after he's not explaining anything to me, he said, Zulema, either I am a man of God or I am not.
And then he died. And they're saying he died. The official cause was at pulmonary embolism, I believe. A heart issue. Natural death. Nothing suspicious. I don't know. That isn't, I mean, the more you hear it, the more you wonder, at least me. Because the time, everything. I mean, it's just so coincidental. One, was there something more to his death? And two, if there wasn't and he had lived, what type of trial would we be facing with Alex Cox? Because as we see in this trial, the defense is really trying to point the finger at Alex and at Lori. And speaking of the defense, John Pryor took the stand. Didn't take the stand, he took the podium to question Zulema. I mentioned he really went off after the 7 gatherers, how often that email was used. Was it used frequently? Who would use it? What type of stuff was sent? Who would log into it? Zulema really didn't know all the specifics. Again, this is an email account from 4 or 5 years ago. But she, didn't back down, didn't seem nervous or intimidated. He brought up the basketball episode when Lori went outside to play basketball with Chad at his house, and Chad walked inside with Zulema. Like, why didn't Chad stay with Lori? Insinuating that Lori was very aggressive in her flirtatiousness and coming on to him. He had the videos of Zulema talking with cops. Now, Zulema has met with officers multiple times. Idaho, Arizona. Obviously, she knows a lot, and they wanted to meet with her. And the issue came up that 2 issues that Pryor wanted to open the door, it seemed, to impeaching the witness. Basically, you can impeach the witness if they've been caught lying, not telling the truth, their stories don't match, and basically you impeach the witness, their testimony doesn't count. Obviously, Pryor does not want this witness, her testimony, to count. So before lunch, the jury was dismissed. We all stayed in the courtroom, and there were 2 issues that Pryor had. The email account. Her testimony apparently changed from, she was asked about it in a police video. She said that the email, or the first time on the stand, or her first witness talking about this email, she testified that that email account was used regularly, and then later on she said it was used sometimes. Or anyway, it wasn't a big enough thing for the judge to say, yeah, she lied. It was just kind of semantics in my view, that it was just like me saying to you, yeah, I use that email every day. And then I tell you an hour later, oh, I use the email sometimes, or something like that. Maybe not even that big of a difference. The second issue, though, was maybe a little bit stronger in the fact that she, in her interview with police, she talked about demons and zombies. Again, this was an interview from 4 years ago, that they didn't need to die in order to get the zombie out of you. But on the stand today, she said the person needed to die to get the zombie out of them. And so Pryor was trying to say she either lied here or she lied there. Which is it? The judge said no, and denied the request to open up an impeachment hearing. I don't know if that's what you call an impeachment line of questioning. Rejected it. Came back from lunch. Pryor said that there was pieces of this 4-hour police interview he wanted to show her to refresh her memory. Well, he actually wanted to admit the whole 4-hour interview as evidence. And the judge said, no way, that's problematic. Imagine them playing a 4-hour tape in court. Even if they played selections and admitted the whole thing as evidence, the jury could have a right to go back and listen to it all. Judge said no, but he could use the tape to refresh her memory. And some of the things, I want to play you a little clip here. Some of the things that Zulema talked about, that Pryor asked, could she control the weather? I've heard this from the beginning, that Zulema's gift from Chad was that she could control the weather, and she believed it. And she said today that she believed it at the time, but she no longer does. Cutting cords, I talked about that a minute ago, that you would cut the cords to get the evil spirit, the evil zombie off of the body. She talked about the light and the dark, that she learned this from Chad. The zombies. I will say that the jury in the afternoon seemed over it. The jury was not taking notes during the cross-examination. The jury, one member had his eyes closed. Others were like this. I saw one guy rub his eyes like this. Another guy was like this. Not all of them, but there was a clear change in the jury reacting to Pryor's questioning versus Lindsay Blake's. And I get it. The afternoons are hard. The afternoons are hard because you've been in there, you've been sitting, it's getting warm, everyone's kind of ready to go home and get out of there. For those of you that are like, why don't they go till 5? I just have to say, thank goodness it gets out at 3:30, because there is only so much you can handle. And sitting and listening to this really crazy testimony at times, I realize that if you're at home on a comfortable couch, fast forwarding or whatever, it's different than if you're actually there. Side note, that was just my thing. Well, I want to play this exchange where Pryor played a clip from the interview where Hermosillo, Detective Hermosillo, apparently, and Kaya Kamano's in there, and an FBI guy, Ricky Wright. And Hermosillo, according to Pryor, says to Zulema, listen, you've told Gilbert police something different than you're telling us. We want to be sure what you're saying is accurate and true, because if not, if you have different testimony here versus there, when it comes time for trial, we gotta know what really happened. We gotta know the story, the accurate story of what happened. Pryor really wanted this in to show that she was working with the police to come up with her testimony, which would be a very serious offense. If you go meet with a cop and suddenly your testimony's changed, yeah, that's an issue. It has to be your testimony, what you witnessed. So Pryor really drilled down on trying to get her to to say basically that the police had worked with her on the testimony. Lindsay Blake would not let up and kept objecting. To the point, we have not seen this in this trial yet, where the judge told Pryor he needed to move along with the questioning. And he listen to it. Listen to how that played out.
Was it your understanding as part of that meeting
that what you were attempting to do was to get your story straight when you had to testify in a trial of this case.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative misstates the evidence or
Overruled.
testimony.
It's overruled.
Is it your understanding that what Officer Kiyakamanu of the Rexburg Police Department, Officer Hermosillo of the Rexburg Police Department, and your lawyer and you were trying to get your story straight about all the inconsistent statements you made to various police
Objection, Your
agencies?
Honor. Argumentative.
Sustained.
Move to strike.
That's sustained. I strike the question.
Officer Hermosillo was trying to make your testimony more credible. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Sustained.
You have previously heard about inconsistent statements you may have made to various agencies. Is that right?
Yes.
And Officer Hermosillo talked about minimizing the impact of defense counsel in your questioning, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Sustained.
And the purpose of that meeting was just so that you would be able to get your story straight, was it not, ma'am?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered. Argumentative.
Sustained.
What do you understand the purpose of Officer Hermosillo telling you that he was trying to make you credible in front of a jury?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
That was not asked, Judge.
It's overruled. You can answer the question, ma'am.
Madam Clerk, would you read back that question for me, please?
What do you understand the purpose of Officer Hermosillo telling you that he was trying to be incredible? My understanding was that there was some inconsistencies and he wanted to clarify them to, just like he said, to be ahead of what you're doing right now.
And the discussion was directly to you that we were trying to get ahead of the defense counsel so that we were prepared for the potential attack on all of the inconsistent statements that you have made. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor. This is argumentative.
Sustained.
Move to strike.
Strike that question.
So getting ahead of the curve, what do you mean by getting ahead of the curve?
I didn't say ahead of the curve. Did I say ahead of the curve?
What do you recall Officer Hermosillo saying, getting ahead of what?
Objection, Your Honor. These have been asked and answered.
Overruled.
If you don't remember, Judge, we can refresh your recollection once again.
I'd prefer you just continue on with cross, Mr. Pryor.
Do you believe it was the intent of your discussion with Officer Hermosillo on that day of 4/29 of 21 to prepare you to testify today?
Yes.
And you believe that as part of that preparation, he was discussing with you how we can, you folks, you, your lawyer, Officer Kiyakamanu and Officer Hermosillo, can frame your testimony in a way that resolves some of the.
Objection, Your Honor. This is argumentative and it's misstating the testimony. And it's been
Sustained.
asked and answered.
It's sustained.
Judge, I want the witness to go back and have to review the,
Well, there hasn't been any response, Mr. Pryor, that she doesn't recall. It's just been some sustained objections in the way you're framing the
Okay.
questions. So just
Right.
ask additional questions and then we'll see if she needs to be refreshed or not.
do you specifically recall what Officer Hermosillo referenced when he said he was trying to get you ahead of something?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said that he was trying to get ahead of what you're doing right now.
So in other words, he was aiding you in resolving different statements you may have made in the past.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative and mischaracterizes the testimony.
Sustained.
Move to strike as well.
It is
What-
stricken and it is stricken and I'll reiterate, and I may not have done this before, when I indicate things are stricken, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that means you are to disregard that and not consider it in any way in your deliberations. And I've said that on multiple occasions here, but that's just a clarifying instruction from the court at this time. Mr. Pryor, you can continue.
And what did you understand when Officer Curmacio was trying to get us ahead of something? What exactly was he trying to get ahead of for your benefit?
Objection, Your Honor. This has been asked and answered multiple times.
Sustained.
Isn't it true, ma'am, that the purpose of your meeting with Officer Hermosillo was to mold your testimony in a certain way today?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered misstates the testimony.
Overruled.
Isn't it true that the
Oh,
purpose?
Mr. Pryor,
I'm sorry.
there was a
Judge.
question posed she didn't answer yet. Let's see if she answers the question, please.
No, it was not to mold it.
Okay. What do you believe the purpose was?
Objection, Your Honor. This has been asked and answered multiple times.
Sustained. It's sustained, Mr. Pryor, and we're not going to keep going down the same path of asked and answered. So you either need to change topics or we need to move on one way or another.
And he moved on. So I don't know, again, during that portion, by the way, as I'm in the courtroom trying to type this stuff out, imagine trying to type question, asked and answer. I couldn't get it all. And when it is stricken, as the judge said, the jury can't consider it. It's stricken from the record. And Lindsay Blake will often say, objection, move to strike, get it off the record. And that is what she did this afternoon. So Pryor rested. He did say that he's keeping Zulema under subpoena and plans to recall her. We'll see if that actually happens during the defense, but that'll be interesting. So she remains under subpoena. I do want to talk about, there was one other witness for the last 30, 40 minutes today. Very serious witness talking about very serious stuff. We'll get into it more tomorrow. This was Dr. Garth Warren. He's the let me see if I have a photo of him. I don't think I do, but I'll share one with you tomorrow. He is the medical examiner for the state of Idaho, or was. Still is. His results for JJ, he did the autopsy on JJ. He talked about the autopsy, going in and cutting open the body bag, and bottom line, the cause of death for JJ was asphyxia by plastic bag and duct tape over the mouth. I don't even know how you can say that. The manner of death, homicide. As he was talking about these things, Larry Woodcock bowed his head and was crying, wiping tears. In fact, Larry Woodcock walked out of the courtroom as they were talking about Tylee. He said Tylee died homicide by unspecified means. Basically, there wasn't enough of her to determine how she died. He said she was burned, she was dismembered, cut up, and that her remains were brought into the medical examiner's office in a bunch of bags. And inside, there were 2 body bags, and there was a brown paper bag, and inside that bag were other little bags. So quite heavy, horrible, just devastating stuff today to end the day. And tomorrow we have been warned that autopsy photos will be shown, not on the live stream and not to those of us in the courtroom, but to the jurors and to the parties that are in there. Those of us in the courtroom will be seated on one side while those photos are shown. I remember very well, last year when those pictures were shown. We actually saw them. I wish I could forget them. I don't think I ever will. And I personally don't mind that we're not being shown them, but those jurors will definitely remember them. So tomorrow we'll hear from Dr. Warren. He'll be back on the stand. He will be witness number, 46, 47, 49, I think. 49, maybe 50. So yeah, they're moving along with the witnesses. I want to show you this picture. I was thinking about Tammy today. I was thinking about her parents. This is her mom and dad at her grave before Phyllis passed away last year. Phyllis died in June of 2023. There she is with Ron, her husband, at their wonderful daughter's gravesite in Springville, Utah. Tammy would have celebrated her birthday this past Saturday on May 4th. And her mom made it through the first trial and then passed away. But we know that her dad's watching, and I imagine we'll hear from Tammy's siblings, at least one of them, Samantha, coming up here soon in the trial. And thinking about Tammy today, of course, thinking about JJ and Tylee, especially after you hear all this devastating testimony, and Charles as well, and to all of the victims. We send our love to you. Okay, let me go to questions. There's a lot, and shout outs. And I do want to acknowledge something. My cough. Only because you all keep messaging me. I promise I'm okay. I really only get the cough when I'm doing this show because I talk for an hour. I got sick about two and a half weeks ago when I was in Jamaica, came home. I feel fine. I feel great. But I know that I cough, and I concern many of you. And so what I did tonight, I have cough drops off to the side of me here. I can't turn the camera. I have a water, I have cough drops, and I went to get a big thing of Coke, hoping it would coat my throat. Instead, it created some burps. So earlier tonight, I thought I was muted when I had a little burp. I apologize if you heard that, because apparently many of you did. Just being transparent here. I do burp, and I did burp during a sound, but when one of those clips was being played, I looked down and my light was not blinking. It blinks when it's muted, and I thought, oh no. So I'm fine. I just want this cough to go away. And if you've been watching the courtroom, you notice Judge Boyce is a little stuffed up. Lindsay Blake has been stuffed up. Several people in the courtroom. It must be someone said the courtroom cough. Yes, but thank you for your concern. And I wish I could have tried all of the remedies you sent me, because I think I got sent like 192. I have not boiled yellow and purple onions yet to put in my throat, but maybe I will. Okay, here we go. Lindsay, did the bailiff get mad at John prior towards the end of the day? He looked angry and pointed at him. I don't think so. That may have been him trying to tell John to do a technical something or other, but I didn't see him mad at him. Jennifer, I'm going to be coming next week. Can you advise what the rules are as to whether you can bring in food, snacks, water, hydro flask, etc.? You can, no glass containers. You can't bring in a glass bottle. You can bring in a water bottle. I bring a water bottle. I bring small snacks in my backpack. Just realize that whatever you bring in has to go through security, like an airport type scanner. And then you sit with it at your seat. And then during the breaks, you have to leave. So some people have like Jimmy John's dropped off, or they'll run down to Chick-fil-A or something. You can bring a cushion. Anyway, I hope that helps. You can bring in food though. Don't bring like a whole on turkey dinner, but if you do, bring me some. Zulema, this is from Jean. Zulema testified this morning that she and Alex were contacted by Chad and Lori to inform them that Tammy's body was being exhumed. How did Chad and Lori know this? Good question. My understanding was family was not notified until after. Yeah, I don't know. I'll try to find that out, because I'd be fascinated to know. But I don't know how they knew. Paul, does the court still use a stenographer typing up the dialogue on a machine even when it's electronically recorded? I see the same lady in front of the bench appearing on the stenographer. Occasionally, they will ask for a previous sentence to be read back, and she looks at something, then reads it. Do you know how she does it? I can't imagine paying attention that intensely to capture every word in the courtroom, especially when Pryor talks over everyone and has an odd speech pattern. She types everything. She does. And I've wanted to do a story with her and the other court reporters about how they do it. It's like a shorthand typewriter. And I did not show you on the map. Let me show you where she sits. You probably have seen her. She's right here. She's watching the witness's mouth. And that's when the judge, or she will occasionally like say a word that she hasn't heard before, or a word that's hard to understand. She'll ask and they will repeat it. And that's her job. So she does type it all. I know it's crazy, but good for her patience. And I imagine their backs sitting all day just are not very good. After the Daybell trial, will I interview Lindsay Blake? Jeanette says, yes, I would love to. I'd love to interview Lindsay, Rob, all the prosecutors, Rachel Smith on the last one, Spencer, Rock, all of them. I'd love to have them all in a room and talk to them because I cannot imagine the psychological toll this has taken on them because boy, could you imagine? Is lunch provided for the witnesses, Melissa says. Yes. Meals are provided. Lodging is provided. If they need to spend the night, transportation is provided. I think they get like a mileage reimbursement if they drive up or if they fly up. They are taken care of. And they go in and have the lunch in like a private room. They have like a waiting room, like a green room at a TV show. They get ready to take the stand. What is Judge Boyce looking at on his computer? From Daisy Grace. Good question, Daisy. He did address this earlier on. He told the jurors he has 2 screens. He said that sometimes he's looking up stuff about the case, law. He said, don't be distracted by me looking at my computers. I am engaged with the court. And I did notice today when there was one time where Pryor asked like 2 questions in the same sentence, and Zulema said, you just asked me 2 questions. Can you please ask me one at a time? Judge Boyce kind of smiled. So it was pretty funny. How can Garrett Smith come back in the court after removal? Ginger asks. Well, yesterday they said that he was removed because he was nodding at the witness. I'm sure maybe the judge talked to him or maybe he just came in today and knew that he had to keep a straight face. Whatever he did, it sounds like it wasn't that like damaging the fact that he was banned from the courtroom, but sounds like it got taken care of. I wonder if Chad's been selling more books since he's been jailed, Catherine asks. I don't know. Maybe. There's always the interest. There's always the intrigue. People are always looking for stuff. So perhaps. Wendy, how did the jury respond to Pryor pounding Zulema about her inconsistency and also about Lindsay's redirect cleaning things up? Okay, I talked about that a minute ago, but really, they seemed over it. They seemed like, come on. What are you doing? They weren't taking notes. They weren't smiling. It was very much a, let's move on now. Nothing against Pryor, but that's what it seemed. Oliver asked Nate if somebody warned Chad that he couldn't make expressions or shake his hands no when he did. No, I mean, they tell everybody to keep poker faced in the courtroom, but I know Chad, sometimes you'll catch him nodding, you'll catch him whispering to John, taking notes, passing it. I didn't see anybody go up to him today and say, stop making expressions. Doesn't Melanie P. and Zulema both have immunity, but Melanie Gibb does not, correct? From Kokomo. I don't know the details of that. I'm new to this whole tragic debacle. Can anyone tell me what Pryor is trying to do fishing around Melanie Gibb? Well, he wants to, one, I think, put holes in her testimony, discredit her as a witness. She is a key witness, much like Zulema. I think he also wants to maybe cast some doubt that she may have been involved. There's been no evidence of that, other than she was there the weekend JJ was last seen alive. That's it. And she did originally tell the police she had JJ, but then she went back to them and said she didn't. So Pryor is really trying to point the finger every which way other than at Chad. And if you can just create a little bit of doubt, that's all you need to get beyond the reasonable doubt, get some doubt in there. Enzo, what would happen if someone said they'd been watching the trial prior to being a witness? They likely wouldn't testify. There was, last year, David Warwick said he had watched a little bit of East Idaho News. They inquired about what he saw, what he heard. He said he was watching it one day. I think he was homesick, and he realized that, oh man, I'm watching it, and he turned it off. He was allowed to continue to testify. But if other people were like, yeah, I've watched everything and I have my opinion made up, they probably would not be allowed to go. They're told not to watch, and they don't want anything affecting their testimony. Why does Pryor ask permission to go back to his desk? I understand asking to publish. I get that one, but going back to the desk, I think it's a formality just in the court. The judge is running the courtroom. You want to be sure everything's done accurately, and the judge might wonder why he's leaving the lectern, and that could be an issue. Speaking of the lectern, Please, please, please. This is from J. Neal. Let Nate know the difference between a podium and a lectern. You stand on a podium, you put paperwork on a stand called a lectern. Drives me nuts. You're right. I believe you're right. I will start saying lectern. I believe a podium stood at the podium. I think I've just always said that. But I appreciate that. Thank you for your insight. So the lectern, prior at the lectern. All right, where are my shout outs? I have several. Janine Schindler, my sister Jerry Miller lives in California and I live in Alaska. We watch your show every night. Thank you, Jean and Jerry, the sisters. Jen and Kim, I met you today. They drove all the way all the way from Idaho Falls and they couldn't get in the courtroom. They were late, a few minutes late. So they watched out on their phones in the hall. Be on time. Not saying that to be mean, but if you're going to come, be on time. John and Patty Summerhauser, Aaron Dietz, Diane Clemens, Sheila McHugh from Italy, Valerie Moore, Brian Graham, Jackie Martinez, Martha Christie, Donna Barnes, who else? Betty Rice, Mary Lou, Kathy Hollister, Megan Sorensen, and Jerry Jackman. Hi, guys and ladies. Thank you for watching. Couple more questions. Vicky K, also want to say hi to you. Michelle Gomfrina and Teresa Rathbone. Thank you all for your support. Okay, some other couple questions. Why do you think Lori was mentally ill, yet no one has suggested that Chad is mentally ill? It sounds like she was just repeating info he said. Was he evaluated for mental? No, that's never come up with him. It's never come up. The insanity issue, the mentally ill issue, none of that. Lori, of course, was admitted to the state hospital for 9 months. And she was the activities director in there. The other residents loved her. She loved it there. She got to do her hair. She got to wear normal clothes. Chad has always been at the jail. There's never been anything brought up about mental illness with him. Angela says, if you tried to interview Brandon Boudreaux, I'm so curious to hear from him. I have spoken with Brandon often, Angela, off the record. We've texted, we've talked, we've met up. I hope one day he'll do an interview. He's done one interview at the very beginning. I also understand that he kind of wants this over and behind with and done with. So I get it if he doesn't talk, but yes, I'd love to talk with him. He's remarried now, has a wonderful family. He's happy with where he's at. But yeah, it would be great to interview him. As I've said, there's so many, every witness I'd love to talk to after the fact, when they can talk. Has anyone ever mentioned whether Tylee confided in a friend about her mother and her beliefs? That's from Vicky. Melanie Gibb said that one time she overheard Tylee or Lori tell Tylee that she had become a zombie, and Tylee said, "Oh no, not me, Mom." That's as much as I've heard. Everyone in Lori and Chad's circle should be held accountable, but what if they refuse to testify? Would Lori have been convicted without their testimony? Would Chad be on trial for the death penalty? That's from Jenny. I don't know if Lori would have been convicted. Maybe. If the inner circle, if all of them didn't testify and all they had was the expert witnesses with the text messages, the evidence of the conditions of the bodies, the medical experts, there might still be enough there to convict without the inner circle. That makes it easier, I guess, or at least more concrete. But and Chad, I still think it would be a death penalty trial, considering the heinous crimes that he's accused of. Why does Zulema have immunity? What murder did they consider her a co-conspirator? That's never come out, Jody, that she was a co-conspirator for murder. She's never been named. Alex was a co-conspirator, and the court documents said others too, but I don't know about her. She was not named. So there we go. I think we got them all. Thank you all. Again, Bobby Cat, I'm saying hi to you. Thank you for your support and your donation. Remember, you can subscribe. Not by hitting that button, the subscribe right there. East Idaho News, if you're watching on YouTube. If you're following on Facebook, go ahead and give us a like. We like you. We hope you like us. Here's how you can follow me on the Facebooks, on the Instagrams, on the X's, the Twitters, and on East Idaho News YouTube. That's where, if you haven't watched all of Zulema's police interviews, we have them there. You should go back and watch if you're interested in them. Every night, I'm here, 6:30 Mountain Time, breaking down the case, the trial of Chad Daybell. Someone asked me today, are you nearly done? Are you nearly coming back to Idaho Falls? I think we're about halfway done, maybe a little more. But side note, I think that's another thing with my cough. We have a humidifier at our house that circulates through our system, and here in a hotel, I don't. So I think that's why I'm a little more raspy here. We'll be back tomorrow morning. The medical examiner is back on the stand, and other witnesses will take the stand as well. And then tomorrow night, I'll break it all down for you, and here to answer your questions. So many of you have emailed and sent me Facebook messages. I try to respond to as many as I can. If I don't, please don't be offended. If you send me questions, I send them all on to Peggy, my wonderful helper, who's helping me all the time, and she compiles them, and we try to get to as many as we can. But again, please don't be offended if I can't get back to you. And if I do get back to you, please know I appreciate it. My fortune tonight, I went and got that soda at Panda Express, and you know what my fortune said tonight? Let me show you. A thank you goes a long way. So I thank you all for watching every night and for supporting East Idaho News and my wonderful team. I hope you have a good night. Please join me tomorrow night on Courtroom Insider. See you later.